Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry about that. So I want to welcome you to this second session on lessons learned. Um, Karen is off today. She is usually my co-facilitator. Karen is with the UU Church of Winston-Salem in North Carolina, and is a member of the board of UUAM. Um, my website is feelgoodconsulting.net. As many people on the call have already stated, I'm a member also of the UU Church of Delaware County in Media, Pennsylvania. We're a suburb of Philadelphia. I've been a member there for about 27 years. I'm also a former staff member with the Central East region of the UUA, and I am currently still an adjunct staff with the Central East region. So let me give you just a brief introduction before we open up the conversation. So as we all know, folks, this thing is not over yet. At last count, there were at least 40 states in the union that are seeing a steady increase in new coronavirus cases compared to the previous week. Last week, when I did this session, that number was 33. New cases of the disease have reached over 70,000 per day, and it's estimated that it could reach 100,000 per day. And nearly 1 in 100 Americans has now tested positive for the virus. This thing is not going away anytime soon. There are reports out of South Korea, studies that were done that show that children or young adults ages 10 to 19 are spreading the disease. They may not have the disease itself, but they are capable of spreading the virus. So we are by no means out of the woods. Many of you have already seen this. Back in May, there was a formal statement that came out from the UUA Safe Congregations team. Let me just read it to you. In the midst of uncertainty, it is the UUA's strong recommendation that congregations plan for ongoing virtual gathering and operations through May 2021. This applies to worship, events, committee meetings, staff meetings, one-on-one visits, rites of passage, and more. While smaller gatherings may be able to resume sooner if conditions improve, planning for virtual operations that could continue for a full year is advisable. The wording in this is kind of interesting. The UUA is not saying don't open until May. They're saying that congregations should plan for virtual gatherings through May. And that is I think, a significant difference. There's also a statement that came out last month from the UUA Safe Congregations Committee regarding outdoor gatherings. And I know that there are people in congregations that are beginning to, or already encouraging the leadership to allow them to use church grounds. These are the guidelines the UUA has come up with. They say that data show that the risks of transmission of COVID-19 are lower in outdoor settings. However, experts advise that facial coverings, physical distancing, and limits on singing still be in place. If you're considering holding an outdoor gathering of 2 or more people, we urge you to establish plans and guidelines to keep our most vulnerable participants safer from the possibility of COVID transmission. And their recommendations include, among others, no communal singing, no food service, bathrooms that are frequently cleaned and well ventilated, if you permit people to use bathrooms at all, masks and facial coverings, adequate hand washing and hand sanitation supplies, and inclusive and accessible spaces for sitting. For many people, particularly those using a wheelchair, it's not comfortable to try to cross the grass or rocky grounds in order to get to where the event is being held. Also, methods for including people who are hard of hearing and or visually impaired, should be taken into account, especially given the obstacles of distance and mass. So these are the questions that I'm going to ask you to ponder and discuss and ask and answer as we spend our time together. As we adjust to church life in the virtual age, what are we learning? And I'll share what we're learning as well in my congregation. What are our challenges and what innovative solutions are we implementing? As we look ahead to the next few weeks and months, what is the plan? And how do you see our congregations differently now and in the future? So one more thing I'd like to share with you. Most of you, when you registered, answered 2 questions, and I'd like to share the answers that I received from those questions. The first was, please briefly share what your congregation is doing to address the challenges you are currently facing and any innovative solutions you are implementing. And these are some of the things that I heard. Weekly small covenant group meetings via Zoom, complying with county regulations. These are both challenges and innovations. One congregation formed 9 geographical pods for members and friends to gather once a week by Zoom. Inviting small groups to meet in the Memorial Garden. We're making a new inspiring video about who we are. I can't wait to see it. Improving quality and variety of online offerings. More casual social gathering opportunities for the congregation, and summer adult faith development offerings. We did some RE visioning that is resulting in a total overhaul of our RE program for 2020-2021, finding more ways to make worship comfortable and more interactive, more challenges and innovations. We moved our thrift sale to an online sale of limited items with curbside pickup. Pity parties, and I would love to hear more about that. Converting from on-site to online mission delivery, promoting small group ministry, and creating a digital path to membership. Hoping multi-generational trivia nights, campfires, song nights will be attractive in the winter to help reconnect those not currently connecting. A combination of live and pre-recorded videos for Sunday services via Zoom, revamping our communication channels and messaging, and refocusing our attention on justice issues. The second question that I asked was, what is your congregation learning about itself during this extraordinary time? And here's what you told me. We are resilient, and I heard this from several of you. We are called to be together in this time of uncertainty. Our community can thrive beyond the walls of the building. We are more than a building. We are the church, not the building. These are 3 separate responses. We have more varied needs as a community than we once thought. Most people are remaining committed and connected, the willingness to stay connected no matter what it takes. Relationships are more important than programs. How to be a no normal church. There seems to be an overall okayness with the pandemic restrictions. People really miss being together. A lot more people are willing and able to learn technology than we or they expected. We've needed extraordinary grace with each other, and regular communication is the key. Some previously inactive older members seem to be returning. We were stuck in our known ways of doing things. The importance of our religious community in people's lives, and the need to change how we deliver our mission and programming. Patience, flexibility, new technology, the importance of other kinds of connection, and learning that we work well together but have different perspectives on such issues as safety. Some interesting responses and generally very optimistic and that show the faith and the resiliency and the tenacity of our Unitarian Universalists. So this will be on the recording if you want to go back and take a look at it again. So what I'd like to do before we open up the conversation is to do a little bit of polling with you. Karen, there you are. Oh my goodness, I was so worried.
I'm so sorry.
Don't tell me you forgot about me. That could never happen.
No, not at all. I just forgot what time and day it was.
Oh, good. So Karen, would you introduce yourself?
Yes. I'm sorry, everyone, for being late. I'm Karen Armstrong. I serve the UU Fellowship of Winston-Salem in Central North Carolina as a membership manager. I've been here about 10 years, and I also serve the UU AMP board, which is how I've gotten to know Mark and his incredible work.
Absolutely. And Karen and I have partnered on this series, both this month and 2 months ago as well. So let me ask you to take these two polls. We also did this last week, and we did this 2 months ago. We're comparing and contrasting the results. So here's the first question, and this is anonymous, so feel free to answer honestly. What is your best guess as to when your congregation will resume in-person worship services? By the end of the summer, September, October, November, December, sometime after January 1st, or not until May 2021. So your best guess. Great, thank you. Everyone has answered it. And here are the results. No one expects to come back before November. 2 of you are looking possibly at November, December. I'd love to hear from you as we open up our discussion. 40% sometime after January 1, and half of you not until May of 2021. So that's quite a contrast. I'll be putting all these numbers together and getting this out to you, or putting it as a blog on my website, making you aware of it, comparing the numbers from 2 months ago with the numbers now. And it's pretty striking that we're pretty much resigned. We're not getting back together anytime soon, certainly not before the first of the year. And many of you, or half of you, are feeling that it may not be until sometime this spring. So that's the first poll. Let me bring up the second question. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. So the second question has to do with planning for what happens next. Where is your congregation in terms of planning for a reopening? We haven't started yet. We're just beginning. We have a planning process underway. We have a plan in place, which is subject to modifications, and we don't have a clue, or at least I don't have a clue, because I'm not privy to it. Okay, great. Everyone has voted. Let me show you the results. So a couple of you haven't started yet. A quarter of you are just beginning. The majority of you have a planning process underway, and only 2 of you already have a plan in place, which is subject to modification. I'm happy to see that there isn't anyone who doesn't have any idea, which means that either you're involved in it or those that are planning are including you in terms of communicating. Okay, great. I'll again, I'll put together these numbers and compare 2 months ago with the numbers that we got today and last week when we did the first of these July sessions. Um, but I think people are much more realistic now about when we are going to be coming back together. And congregations in general are much further along in terms of the planning. And I hope that you'll share your planning and what how that's going and what ideas you're coming up with, so that we can learn from each other. So I'm going to step out of the way and just facilitate and ask, open it up for anyone who would like to break the ice and get us started. Don't worry about it. This happens every time.
So I'm Shannon. I'm here.
Thank you.
I'll wave so you know who it is. There's a lot of pictures on the screen.
Shannon.
I don't know how well I'm gonna. What I want to break the ice with is, can you give me an example of like what we're talking about? What we're talking about? I mean, I know we're talking about opening the churches. I know we're talking about challenges that we have. Do we usually just talk to you about a question or what?
Shannon, this is a forum. So some of you may have questions that either I or others can answer. Some of you will want to share what you're doing and preparing now to make worship services better online, and what your plan is when you do return to face-to-face worship services and meetings. Some of you may want to share your challenges, um, the difficulty that it's been for you and your congregation. It's really wide open. And we've had some really good, open, robust conversations where people, I think, have really learned a lot from each other. Does that help?
Yeah, and it primes me up. Are any of you, so right now I'm the president of the board and I'm scheduled to go off in December. And we're talking about, are we going to, we have an election every year. It's a rolling 2-year term right now. When I spoke with the leadership, with Lisa Presley, she does like a weekly thing on Wednesdays. She's in the Mid-America region, and told her, like, you know, how are we going to do this? And she said, well, one of the things she said was, maybe now's not the time to change everybody who's been involved with everything up until this point. And I really hadn't considered that. And I wondered, had you?
I would think it would be the time to keep as many key people in place as you can.
So thank you, Marilyn. Shannon, are you talking about staff?
Board.
Or
I'm sorry, I missed
leadership, like the big, you know, the big player leadership stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, our new board term started July 1st, and we have 3 new people. They've come on, but we've also asked the 2 who were supposed to leave to stay on at least for the next 6 months to help with the transition.
Yeah, Shannon, this is Ann from Somerville. I would encourage you to keep your processes in place, and, you know, elections or whatever, and maybe you become a consultant to the board, or you find a different role, but I would not walk away willy-nilly from your democratic process.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I'll make it unanimous. I think you it sounds odd, but you stay business as usual, because we don't know how long this is going to last. And you know, what made you successful as a congregation needs to continue as you look to try new innovative things as we move forward. I want to start calling on people in the order in which I'm catching them. So, Ann, I'm going to ask you to go first. Then Kelly, you're on deck, and then Garnet, and then Carol W. So Ann.
So I just wanted to thank this group. The last time I attended, I got the idea of, I heard that several smaller congregations in central New Jersey were going to form a consortium and go over the summer with common, shared services. Since we're on Zoom, why not? And that gave all the ministers 6 weeks off. And we're 2 weeks into this experiment, or 3 weeks into this experiment, and it's been great. It's been great for the ministers, and it's been just great for everybody to get a shared experience.
How many congregations are involved in this collaboration?
There's 4.
And are you having one worship service?
One service, and it's been pretty consistent at 93 participants, 94, 5 participants. And our congregations had about 35 to 40 of that group. It's just been great, I think.
And have the congregations been taking turns hosting?
Yes, we have it basically is like Congregation 1 is doing their thing and the rest of us glom on. And then the next week, Congregation 2 does it and the rest of us glom on. And it's been nice. The coffee hours, you bust up into little groups and you meet people from other congregations. And I think it's going to have the benefit long term of strengthening central New Jersey's knowledge of each other and our way to be together.
That's great. Thanks, Ann, for sharing that. Kelly?
Yes, Mark. So my question, I guess, to the group is that, here in Florida, it's pretty hectic right now, being that we're one of the hot spots in terms of COVID. And so when you did the poll in terms of where's your congregation in terms of planning for reopening, I was probably one of the 10% because I don't think we're ready to have that conversation yet because of all the cases. And so we are kind of we're trying to get started. But my question to the group is, does UUA? I mean, I'm in the southern region, but does UUA have guidelines or a template or any type of directive or direction in terms of even how to determine if you're ready to reopen? I mean, our gut says no because we're in Florida, but I mean, at some point we will have to put a plan in place. And what is everybody doing in terms of knowing when you're ready to reopen?
Karen, could you do me a favor? And if you could get the link to the statement on the UUA website,
Okay.
It's the UUA pandemic, and then put that up there because they do have some specific recommendations for reopening. Kelly, I will say a couple of things. One, it's never too early to start talking, even
Right.
if it may not open until 2022. And also, and we'll talk more about this, and my congregation and so many of us are on this call. We're not talking about a timeline anymore. We're talking about establishing a criteria for reopening.
Okay.
We are not telling the congregation we're going to open in October, or no, we'll open in January. No, we're going to open in May. We don't know. The virus will tell us when it's time to open. And Lori is on the task force. Lori Cook is on the task force with me, and we can elaborate on that as we move forward.
Okay.
Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Arnett.
So I thought it might be helpful. We also have a task force that we put together. And also, just to answer someone else's question, what we did is we asked 2 of our trustees who were rolling off the board to be on this task force. And they both agreed to be on the task force. So that's how we kept the continuity. And one of them, in fact, is chairing the task force. That's really good. But I thought it might be helpful to hear sort of what we what we expect the task force to take up over the next several months. And in New York, New York is one of the places where supposedly we're sort of over the hump. And I will tell you, we are not opening. We're not even thinking about opening until spring, probably, unless something huge changes. But anyway, I thought this might be helpful. So this was in the email that was sent out to people who we invited to join the task force. And we had a long conversation about what skills were needed in the task force. Like, we wanted to have somebody who had experience in public health, for instance, and somebody who had experience in technology. And so we really looked broadly at our congregation. But anyway, here it is. So worship. How do we continue to provide meaningful worship to members, friends, and visitors who may not feel safe entering the building, even long after the worst of the pandemic has passed? What have we learned about providing online services? What elements of online worship would we like to retain? When will music, choir, and congregational singing be safe, and how to provide music safely? We have a very musical congregation, and this has been really painful for us, this part of it. What are our policies regarding building rentals? Under what circumstances might the congregation use the building? When and how can we allow meetings, events, and programs? How many people? Which rooms? What are the safety requirements? And then how do we ensure the safety of our staff, and what are our work from home policies? So, that's kind of the list that was the marketing list. Like, here are the really interesting things that we're going to be talking about in this task force. And we really hope that you join us, because you have a history in public health and we think you'd be great. And almost everybody that we asked joined. Some people couldn't, but it's a task force of about 10 people, including most of the staff, me and our senior minister and our director of religious education, and some people who have left the board, a board person, and several sort of at-large members who have specific skills that we wanted to include. Anyway, I thought that might be helpful.
It is very helpful. That's great, Garnet. We have a task force of about 10 as well. And I know people from Brooklyn are tough, but I bet our task force could beat up your task force. I also forgot Marilyn is also on our task force, along with Lori. Am I missing anyone else? No, Marilyn and Lori and I. Garnet, thanks. That is really helpful. And I assume that you'll also be sending out regular communication to the congregation as well, because we've talked about that a lot in our team.
Yes, yeah, for sure. We're pretty good communicators, so I imagine that will continue.
Thanks. I'm going to call on Carol W. and then Jen, you're on deck.
I was one of the people who checked the box. We haven't started a planning process yet, and I'm feeling kind of like very up and down about that, because I got kind of excited about Mark's task force model and some of the materials that got put together, and I kind of tried to get some energy going on that, and there really wasn't any, except for me. And of course I can't do that by myself, so I'm not going to. And I've been thinking about some of the things that I would be responsible for, and they're all like the logistical pieces, like what supplies do we need? What does the cleaning company have to do? And all of that stuff. And I've really decided not to do anything on that right now, because things change so fast that it sort of feels like if anything that I do is potentially not going to be what's actually needed. So I guess I'm just looking for kind of like a little comfort. Can you just, like, I'll just huddle into a little ball over here and hope that things are going to be okay. But basically what we're doing right now is we're closed indefinitely to everything, except for a few people who come in. I work from the office, and a couple people just occasionally. So we're empty and closed indefinitely.
Thanks, Carol. I just want to ask, just following up on what Carol said, raise your hand if you have either staff or members of the congregation that are back in your building for any length of time. A few of you. Keep your hand up if it includes members of the congregation, not just staff. But okay, so for most of you it's staff, but for a few of you, members of the congregation are back into the building. We've been pretty clear with members. Not only are they not allowed in the building, but they can't be on church grounds. So we've been really strict about that. Jen, you've been waiting patiently. And
Oh,
then
no,
Tina, you're on deck.
no worries. I actually want to speak to that. The staff or the non-staff members that go to our congregation actually have a volunteer role, whether they're treasurer or assistant treasurer or something along those lines, and they work out of the office on separate days. So we're not really opening our congregation up to members for any kind of meetings. It's still pretty much a closed building, but technically they're not staff. So, but they have a role that they do for the congregation. Moving on, I guess, Anne already spoke to how our congregation was working with several others to provide worship this summer in a rotational model. Separately, I'm the RE coordinator at our congregation, and we worked, there were 6 of us congregations that put together so that our children and my middle school youth would have opportunities to connect over the summer with those from other congregations. And because we know that even with COVID shutting down a lot of things, sometimes vacation time puts, the attendance kind of drops anyway. So and not all of our congregations were smaller, but this seemed to be working and we opened it up. So we have about 35 kids in each of the 2 subgroups that are rotating back and forth from across the country, I guess. We have 1 or 2, we're primarily New York, New Jersey, but we have like 5 or 6 kids from California, North Carolina, a couple other states, and 1 from Canada. So collaboration is something that we've found is working to try. Now, it's not easier all the time. There's actually a lot of work that went into the RE stuff, and I'm sure there's a lot of work that goes into the worship stuff, but it can definitely help not bolstering like your numbers and stuff. If you have a smaller congregation, I might have had 2 kids showing up for RE and the experience is not going to be there for them, but having all of those other kids to be with definitely enhances the experience that they're getting, and they can continue to show up. So even, I guess, speaking to what our congregations are doing, I'm also on the task force. We're looking at things, but we haven't made a plan as of yet. We're just still evaluating what needs to go into that plan and what guidelines we're going to set in order to reopen. So.
Great. Thank you for sharing all that, Jen. Tina.
Hi. So we also have a task force. And same thing, we were very deliberate about inviting people to join it with specific skills. Initially, our focus was, making a plan to come back to worship. We recently let that go. And so now our plan is focusing on how to, maintain a strong virtual worship and small groups, just more relational offerings online. We're looking at the possibility of having small groups. In Illinois, we are fairly stable, even though we're ticking back up again. So we are thinking about small groups virtually and the possibility of very small groups, like outside in backyards and things like that. We recently did an assessment of our buildings. We counted seats. We were hopeful that we could have some small groups at Unity Temple because we have an HVAC system that filters the air well. And we were surprised when we actually measured out our space, how few people we could actually get together. So that was disappointing. And for us, we do not have outdoor spaces on our campus. We're in an urban area. So we have some we have some limitations to work with that we're trying to figure out. The reason I raised my hand is, I'm sorry, I don't remember who was talking about communication. One of the things that we recently started doing was holding board chats. And so every couple of weeks, our board is available on a Sunday and a Monday evening to give verbal updates on where we're at. We also send out written communication, but this is an opportunity for people to bring their worries and their concerns and their questions. And when they first started meeting, like 7 or 8 people would show up. And now like 20 plus people are showing up for these conversations. And I think that that's been a really valuable way to get input from the congregation, as well as provide, direct conversations about where we're at and what's going on. So those are some of the things that we have happening. Um, One of the things, we've kind of revamped our membership program, and we're close to being ready to roll that out. And Reverend Dana, we just purchased Faith Forward. We'll be utilizing some of the videos until we are able to have our own videos up and running. So that was something that we were fortunately able to do with the last teeny tiny little bit of money, because now we're not going to have any more money for things like that for a while. So we're excited about incorporating that into our membership program. And I think that's about it. Thanks for listening.
And a couple of questions. One, I know that you were the one who said that your congregation is making a video, and I'd like to hear about that. And also, could you just give a quick summary of Faith Forward for others who might be interested in exploring it?
Sure, I can tell you what I'm doing a deeper dive into it this week, but we have previewed the materials, and really just in general about our congregation. Like so many of you, we have a robust social justice program. We also have just begun a big strategic plan, a 4-year plan to live into our mission statement. So we have some big things happening, but one of the things that we realized is while we have loads of programming, we have not offered a lot of UU identity and a UU theology development. And so that's something that we are really excited to pull from the Faith Forward program. And those are some of the parts of it that we're going to use immediately. So we have revamped our pathway to membership, simplified it in some ways, and then we've added this next step component that we're going to encourage our people to participate in. And one of the reasons why we really love the Faith Forward program is because it's all the videos. Like, we are in a moment of videos, and while we are working on our big video of telling the world who we are and inviting them to participate, which is going to go on the new website in August, we need more little videos to help bring people through. And so we thought the programming was offered a lot. It's all packaged. There's facilitator guides. It seems that ministers, lay leaders, staff, a wide range of people can facilitate easily and quickly. And again, we're big on the video right now. And we do have plans of creating our own smaller videos after we get the big one finished in August. But for now, we feel like this is going to be a tool that will come in handy to help our people stay connected and go deeper, and it's all online.
So,
did that answer your question well enough, Mark?
Yeah, no, that was, well, you didn't talk about the video yet.
Oh, so the video. So our big idea we are lucky. We do have a professional television producer who works for PBS in the congregation. So that's partly why we are able to do this. But what we want is to give a 3-minute snippet of who we are and why you want to be part of who we are. And so we have an outline, and we are actually interviewing congregants and little snippets of testimonials to build the story of what we have to offer, and why we hope people will want to be part of us through this time. And we're in the phase of filming the testimonials now, and then there'll be an editing phase, and we hope to have it by mid-August. And the campaign is similar to like Experience Michigan, but it's Experience Unity Temple. And I think the title of it is Find Your Path. So find your path here. And did that answer that well enough?
Yeah, no, that's good. So it's kind of a marketing video.
Yes, it's a marketing video.
It's so interesting in this time of the pandemic,
mm-hmm.
When people would come and visit virtually. And if you want me to be in the video, I can do a stand up. Please.
Okay.
No charge.
Thanks for the offer.
You're welcome. Karen, could you catch us up on the chat for those that may not have been keeping up with it?
Sure. Well, there were some questions about Faith Forward, so I put the link in there, and that answers all the questions about funding and cost and how the program works. It's very easily laid out on their website. So I put that in. There was some back and forth about, no, this is a different part of the conversation. How people are using the building with staff versus volunteers. I think there wasn't anything unusual that we haven't already talked about, unless someone, if you put something in the chat and I missed it, then speak up now. I want to say, I'm not sure we answered Carol's question about, what if we can't get a team? And so I did ask her what her role was as business admin. And I recall from another one session we had that some folks have elaborate plans and others have kind of a simple, we're doing what the UUA says and not opening until May of 2021. And that means the building and grounds are closed, that kind of thing. So I think not having a detailed complex plan doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be a plan that's simple and can be communicated to your congregation. I remember that from a previous session.
I just noted that Robbie said that their team is not only using UUA guidelines, but their insurance carrier, Church Mutual and Church and Casualty Insurance Agency. And she advises that you want to make sure that your insurance company is behind you if you do plan on reopening, particularly reopening early, and quote unquote. Marilyn, I want to call on you in a second, but I want to acknowledge that it's 3:59 in the East. I know that you all committed to an hour. If you need to go, we'll miss you, and thank you for this time. We will stay on for another 30 minutes and talk some more. We would like to talk more about criteria, among other things. But if you do need to leave, thanks very much. And this will be recorded and it'll be on my website and also on the UUN website. So Marilyn, assuming that you're going to stay, you're up.
I can stay for a few minutes, but I do have to leave soon.
Okay.
But what I wanted to say is that it's kind of important to frame the issue. And while our buildings are closed, our churches and congregations are not. And we need to be careful about that, which some people talked about. And in getting enthusiasm for people to be on the task force, if you frame the task force not only as how to decide when we reopen, but how to decide what we're doing meanwhile, there can be a lot more energy there. And we've talked about a lot of those things already, that can be, people can kind of dig into and get more interested in, and you can get more participants.
Thank you, Marilyn. So I have a couple of questions. First one is how many of you are experiencing pushback from members of your congregation, wanting to get back either onto the church grounds or back into the building, or, what's taking so long? Shannon? Craig? Really? I wasn't aware of that. Could you, Shannon, could you elaborate?
Specifically, there are, so I guess not specifically. One group of people we are seeing are the older individuals who live by themselves. We're seeing an increase in anxiety and depression and just needing to be around other people. The other group are the kids who are separated from each other, and we work so hard to create that and grow that. And there are some kids who can't do video because of what they bring with them to the party. They can't do video, and that mom is having a really hard time with that whole scenario, and the open-ended, we don't know what we're going to do. So that's the pushback. The message is we are here to take care of our all of our people, and we don't want to participate at all in not doing that. We don't want anybody to die. It's really
right. Exactly. Thank you, Shannon. Lori, I want to call on you in a second, but Craig, I wasn't aware that there's some pushback going in our congregation. And would you unmute and give me names? No, I'm just kidding about the names. But are they, some people are saying on the chat, people aren't pushing, but they're asking.
I've been asking, I've been in a couple of meetings with different groups, and it's like, but no, we just want to have a small number of people. And I say, no, we can't do this. Yeah, but we're just talking about, maybe, 10 people in this room. It's not one of those things where they're saying, I'm going to leave the church if you don't do this, but you have to tell them 3, 4, 5 times why it can't be done. The fact that, if we let people come into the sanctuary for a small number of people, absolutely everything has to be cleaned because you have no idea what they've touched. Even if we say you can go into this lounge room, well, you're only 4 people who are sitting in there. What surfaces have you touched? And we don't have a cleaning company that comes in and do it. We have one person who comes in and takes care of that. But one thing I was going to say that where in a way this is working out well with having the shutdown. It's like we were supposed to have had a jubilee at our church at the end of March, and needless to say, that got canceled. But we are having a training at the end of August with a master diversity trainer, and this is going to be opened up to 200 people. With 100 on each day. And there is a limitation on Zoom, even with the professional version, where you can only have 50 breakout rooms, which is why we're limiting it to 100 on each day. But the fact that we can have this training and open it to a greater number than would be coming to the Jubilee, it might be something which will work out, or we're hoping that it will be a really good thing. So, you got to take you look for the good things where you can find them. And, there is Zoom fatigue, but we're surviving.
Thank you, Craig. Lori, and then Ruth.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least to my knowledge, we haven't been experiencing our members asking or pushing back. I mean, they want to know kind of, is there a plan or are we working on a plan? But where we've been getting a lot of questions is from outside groups that use the building. And that's primarily what we've had. One meeting of the task force so far. It's made up half staff, half board. And that's what they've been dealing with solely, is just trying to figure out, do we want to let 12-step groups in the building? Do we want to let income generating outside groups in the building? And if we do, what do we need to have in place? And is our staff safe? So it's a little challenging.
It is. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much is involved in having even a small group come into the building. But before I call on Ruth, I just want to share that in our congregation, we have a day school that petitioned the board to begin using their space. And they submitted, I'm now on the board, although the process started before I joined. They submitted a very, very detailed proposal, very stringent, which included a strict criteria for opening, guidelines when they're in the building, and ongoing monitoring, and under what conditions they would have to close. And the board, after a lot of deliberation and debate, decided to approve their request. And we have made the congregation aware of it. But I just want to very quickly share the criteria, which our task force is right now basing our recommendation on. We live in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and they use statistics provided by the Department of Health, not in our county, but in the county next door, because our county doesn't have a Department of Health. And so what they told us was that as long as the weekly average of confirmed COVID-19 cases does not exceed 29 for 3 weeks, then they will reopen. And the number 29 was the number that was in existence at the time that the county, or actually the state, went green and said you can begin to reopen. So they used the 29 as a benchmark. So the average daily confirmed cases has to be 29 or below for 3 consecutive weeks in order for them to reopen. And if at any point during that time it exceeds 29, then they have to start over again. So that's pretty stringent. And that's why we say it's the criteria that will determine for us when we will reopen. There's no timeline because we don't know when that will happen. Ruth, you've been waiting, and then let me call on Amy, and then Craig, come back to you. Ruth, you have to unmute.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one thing to what Craig said as a perspective, so that one of the reasons that for pushback was, well, where I work, we're open and we're doing it. So I think it's just a piece of information to consider if someone does start pushing back, that, you know, different organizations have different criteria and different situations that can be monitored. So for example, if I'm getting services and coming to you for services, let's just say food, like a soup kitchen, for example, it's different than, you know, going, saying we're going to be having this service and you can come if you're well enough, which puts people who feel at risk for not being able to participate as well. So, I mean, there's a number of different things, but I think it's important to be prepared for that while we're doing it safely. And I want to say hi to Tina, that I love your congregation.
Yeah, we've inspired by our minister, our task force has told the congregation that we'll not only be data-driven, but we'll be values-driven. And we don't really want to return until everybody can return safely. Amy.
I had 3 things. For, is she still here? For Carol, I was going to suggest just keeping up with like this session and the general information from the UUA, so that when all of a sudden people want to know, you can say, here, I've been keeping track, there you go, and just like understand that that's just going to be your little private project for the time being. That's my way of looking at it. In terms of the kids, the special needs kids who can't sit still, I have a few of those. I have personally, not as part of the church, but I have personally decided to allow my children to interact with a very small number of other families and rear like a group together, these families. Because Jenny's saying she's one of the other families. And like I have a son who is struggling with serious depression. And he also has a physical illness where he needs to get out and about, and he's much more able to do that if it's with his friends. And so that's a very calculated choice that I've had to make with a very small number of other families. So it's just a risk that our families have taken together. And lastly, with the older folks, I actually wanted to check with others in my congregation to find out whether we have sort of like a dedicated tech service team to go around and make sure that our older members are able to connect in a satisfactory manner. I know we have some people that have been having difficulty, and that's something that I'm very concerned about because it's such an isolating place to be. And there was something else related to the tech thing. Yeah, I can't remember the other things, but that's it.
Jump back on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Lori, I'm going to call on Craig. Okay, Craig, and then Garnet.
Okay, mine is just a quickie.
It looks like it might take longer than we thought. Craig, put your hand down. We'll come back to Craig. Garnet, why don't we move forward and Craig can...
So it's been kind of interesting in Brooklyn because we have a daycare center that rents our space and they've been open the whole time.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, they were licensed by the city of New York. They had children of essential workers in their daycare center. They were down for a little while. They were down to only 6 kids and they laid off a whole bunch of people and asked us for a rent reduction and there was a whole thing. But then the city came to them and said, we need spaces for the children of essential workers. And this was at the height of it in March and April when New York was just in horrible shape. And the city of New York put a whole bunch of kids in the daycare center and there were all kinds of rules and whatever. And they were not at full capacity, but they've been open the whole time. And it's been great for us because we need the money. It's about 20% of our church's budget. So so the money was, and eventually did pay back their rent. But we also opened, so we have 2 worship spaces. We have a chapel and a sanctuary. And the chapel is probably it's actually a pretty big open space. And when the, last month, I guess May and June, when the protests were really big in New York, one of them was in Cabin Plaza, which is very, very close to where our church is. And we opened the chapel and we opened it as a safe space for protesters. And we had very strict rules. You had to wear a mask. We only allowed 10 people in at a time. We did eventually raise that up to 15, but you could come in, you use the bathroom, you could wash your face if you'd been pepper sprayed or maced or, whatever else was going on over there. You could charge your phone. We had people drop off cases of water and snacks and masks and gloves. And now we're supplied forever on all that stuff. And we were doing it every Friday night and all day Saturday and Sunday afternoon for several weeks. We had 2 volunteers from the congregation every single day and we never had any problems. People were really respectful of the 10-person rule. We don't do it right now because their protests have mostly moved into Manhattan, not in Brooklyn. But it was really important to our congregation that we did that. And no one came to us and said, oh, well, if you're letting protesters in, we should be able to come in too. I mean, I think it was really understood that this was something that we were doing, that needed to be done and that there was a certain amount of risk that we were taking, but it was understood that under the circumstances, it was important. So we were pretty pleased. I will say, however, though, we had a wedding that was supposed to happen in the spring and they rescheduled for fall. And now they're furious with us because we won't let them have their wedding in the sanctuary. Well, we'll let them have the wedding in the sanctuary, just won't let them have 100 people in the sanctuary. And, but Cuomo says 25% can come in and, your church seats 500 people. So why can't we have our 100 people in there? Well, because no, that's why. We told them 15 people and we have good Wi-Fi and they can Zoom the rest of it. But they're mad at us. So,
wow.
Oh, well.
So like good Unitarian Universalists, you all saw a need and you met it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Garnet, for sharing that. Craig, I'm going to give you another shot at this, and then Tina.
Okay, I'll make it quick because I got zoomed out again before. And everyone is oh, nope, they're not frozen. Everyone's just being still. No, it's just a matter of your question where you said that we were not going to open up until we had or did not have the option to open up until we had a count of 29 or fewer people who had COVID-19. Is that 29 per 100,000, or what was the 29?
Okay, well, again, just to be clear, that was the criteria that the Rose Tree Day School has established.
Right.
We're not set on that. That's the number of confirmed cases in Delaware County.
Oh, for the entire county.
The entire county.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. Tina, and make sure, folks, that you read Tina's message in the chat, and her reference to the Madison congregation.
Oh, and if I could just speaking of the chat, anyone who wants a copy of the chat, if you just open it up, do Control-A for all and Control-C for copy, you can paste it into a document, or maybe Mark can add that on his site so that everyone has everything from the chat with all of the links, etc.
Great, thanks. Ruth, thank you for the kind words. Just wanted to say that real quick. And then two things. One, I wanted to point to that. Madison in Wisconsin has a really thorough plan for small groups. We have not gotten as far. We have not made decisions about what we are going to do, but we found this document really helpful. So I don't have a link to it, but if you have interest in seeing it, just send me an email and I'm happy to send it to everybody. Or maybe I'll send it to Mark, and Mark, you can put it out first. So it is really helpful. Then the other thing that I wanted to mention, we have a couple of big projects happening all at the same time. In addition to the task force and revamping the membership program and doing the video and trying to figure out our finances, we also started another project to try to figure out who is still engaged with us virtually. So we have kept track of who's attending the virtual coffee hour. We've created this huge, massive spreadsheet and reached out to all of the leaders and all the small groups to try to get a handle on who is still showing up, so that we can then move into a tailored, personalized outreach plan to reach those who have not been connected with us since we've gone virtual. And so I just wanted to lift that up too, that I don't know if you were all thinking about that, or if anybody has any brilliant ideas based on just making phone calls and you know, sending emails and trying to reach our folks who have not been as active since we've gone virtual. I would love to hear what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Karen, hold on. I just want to go in order. So Jen, you're up, and then Karen.
Oh, so I have two things. One, since you were just talking about groups and following up, it was my understanding that those who were on the pledge team this year were repurposed to, if they felt that they had the bandwidth, to start checking up with members of our congregation. So we've kind of adopted that. I haven't heard much more about it since I'm not in those circles as our coordinator. But I think I'm in, and I'm not I don't go to the board meetings because of the hours I have, and it was suggested I don't. So, but we have a biologist on our reopen task force, and I just want to bring up something that she's mentioned in the last two meetings, that we are never going to get back to a 0% infection rate. That there will always be, so when we keep talking about until everyone can be there, she said there's always going to be a risk factor, and it's a very sobering thought, and we haven't really gotten much past that yet, considering, well, how do we deal with that? And keep looking, oh, let's hope there's a vaccine, but we're not opening until at least after the winter time. I don't think we've talked about my RE program is going to remain remote, and likely services will too through winter, but we haven't officially given our recommend. So we're only recommending to the board. We don't get the final say in this group. I don't know how the other groups are working in other congregations, or if it's or if the task force gets to decide, but we can only make recommendations. And our last recommendation was that we remained closed until the end of August, and then we will get more communication out at that point. So we're kind of still right there and haven't come up with our next batch yet, but we have another meeting in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Jen. Karen.
I just want to respond quickly to what Jen said. Ours is a lot like yours. The task force recommends to the board, and the board can make changes. And I appreciate what you said about the biologists, because we've heard the same sort of thing from the public health person on our task force. So I think kind of where we've drawn the line on that right now, it's ever moving, is that we don't want to be in a position to tell, like to shut the doors and say we can only have 40 people in the building, first 40 are here, or how do we choose those 40? So we want to be able to not have to restrict the space, even though we understand that some people still need to be reached by Zoom or in other ways. So that's a really important point, I think, about just being able to open the doors wide to how it was is not going to necessarily happen, probably ever. But the thing I wanted to say was actually in response to Tina, and maybe it's because we're both membership professionals, but we are in the same place that you are as far as seeing, asking that really hard question of who's not here. And that's hard enough in person, but now we're just kind of building out. We did a tech check, which I totally swiped from Marie at Fox Valley in Wisconsin. And one of the things we asked, which I'm really glad we did, was, are you good? Or do you need to hear from us? Because we have a huge chunk of people who are like, yeah, check in later, but I'm good through, you know, the next 6 months. And we still have an idea of what's going on with them, but we are not like elevating them on our radar, which is nice, because some people just don't want to be bothered. They're busy with work or something else in their lives, then they're connected, but just don't want a deeper connection. But yeah, we're doing that. We did the tech check-in, find out what people needed. I asked first, is there money before I do this? Because if people need help with internet or tablets, do we have a way to actually accommodate that? And now we're just doing kind of what you said about the small groups and trying to see who's connected and who's on the care list, and just where there might be some gaps that need filling in. We might see some patterns, or we might just have to get creative with how we meet those needs. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but it feels relational and important to do that right now.
And Jen put in the chat that they've run a Zoom info session a few times so people can get used to the controls. We think that everyone knows how to use it by now, but that's just not the case. Tina, I also wanted to say that I've gathered some examples of ways in which congregations are connecting with folks that may be isolated or feeling lonely, and I'm including that in my next blog on my website, which will come out in the next couple of days. And in it, I ask if people have other ideas to send it to me, and I'll post those as well. Carol Lewis.
Just to add to that, our pastoral care team actually, along with a few added individuals, divided up our membership list and has made calls to everyone on the membership list. Since the pandemic, they did it once in the beginning, and they just finished doing the second round. And the second round was specifically around, how are you staying connected to First Parish? Are you participating in virtual worship services? Are you participating in any of the small pieces? Are you doing any of the social online pieces we have? If not, why not? How can we help? And doing those same things that Karen was talking about, offering help if we can, making sure we had funding available, that if people need help with internet or with devices, that we can help to provide that if they need it. I haven't heard any requests for that. I just got back from vacation though, so I'm not sure exactly where we're at with all of that, but that's been a big piece for us around the relationship of folks to the congregation.
That's great. Thank you, Carol. So we are reaching the end of our time together. Is there any other thoughts or announcements or questions or anyone would like to say before we adjourn? We have a couple of minutes left. We good? So thank you. As always, these get-togethers are really helpful in sharing ideas, and from people really from coast to coast, which is, I think, the most exciting thing about doing this. We may sponsor another round in a couple of months, unless we're all back together and the pandemic has mysteriously and wonderfully disappeared. Amy, your hands up?
I put a note in the chat. Do you have a link for your blog? You mentioned the blog's going to come out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'll send that to you. You are now on my distribution list, like it or not. I'll get that out to you. You can unsubscribe if you don't want to continue to get them, but
Oh, that's good.
I'll hold it against you. But I'll get that out to you in the next couple of days, Amy. So thank you all. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work and for contributing today. And keep up the good work and stay safe.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Karen.
Bye, Tina.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome, Garnet. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Go Mets.
Okay, I saved the chat for you there.
Okay.
And I did put your link in the blog, but I don't know, I mean, in the